Hello and welcome to this episode of Penguin Shell Personality. I know it's been a while. Before, I think like 3 months ago, I said I was going to start making videos again, which didn't happen, really. But now it's going to happen because I have a script for 8 videos here. And we're going to run through them all right now, hopefully, or at least 4 of them. So I'm coming back. And it's going to be hopefully more consistent again, which would be helpful. So today we're going to look at perceiving, judging, sensing, and intuition, and what that means and what that does and how that works, okay? So let's start with perceiving and judging. So perceiving is here understood to include the processes of becoming aware of things, people, occurrences, and ideas. So, I mean, that's fairly straightforward, right? It's just perceiving is about how we take in things. It's about perceiving things. It's about perception, about being aware of our surroundings, about constantly taking in and considering new information. Whereas then, in contrast to that, we have judging. So judging includes the process of coming to conclusions about what has been perceived, which means once you judge something, you've stopped perceiving it. You've come to a conclusion. There's no need for further information or further elaboration. It's done. The jury's out, it's over. The choice has been made. So then there are so for perception and judging, for each of them, there's 2 different types of them. For perception, we have sensing and we have intuition. And obviously those 2 both act in very different ways, and I'm sure most people who are watching this are pretty aware of them because you're probably watching these videos since you're interested in MBTI, so Myers-Briggs. And then these 2 different methods of perception are 2 of the different letters in the 4-letter personalities. So INFP, intuition, right? And so on. So first of all, let's look at sensing. So through sensing, we are aware of things directly through our 5 senses. And sensing is a direct perception. So sensing is all about tangible things. So I can see the camera right now. I can see the light I set up behind the camera so that hopefully everything looks decent. And I can see the microphone that's slightly out of frame. And I can see a light switch and all sorts of things. I can see the chair I'm in. I can feel the chair I'm on. I can't smell too much right now, but I could smell things. Those would all be senses, of course. And it's direct because it's coming to us. We can't dispute that we have perceived these things. Even if you not accidentally, even if you mistakenly perceive something, let's say you smell something and no one else smells it for some reason, right? You have still perceived that. You still directly perceived that smell, even if everyone else missed it. So, of course, that's direct. There's no real disputing it for yourself. But then there's intuition. So intuition is indirect perception by way of the unconscious. So, of course, we're less aware of the inner working of intuition. And intuition thus results in these aha moments. So, of course, intuition doesn't have that much to do with what you see, unlike sensing, right? It's in direct difference. It is totally different from sensing, which is obviously, I'm sure most of you are kind of know what I mean. Intuition is this idea of leaping from one thing to the next thing, about taking things in, but also excluding different ideas. I would say it's kind of like a jumping off a diving board, right? You jump off, then you get in the pool, and there's all sorts of different things you can do in the air while you land in the water, but you're going from one thing to the next. And most of us, unless if you're a professional and like when you jump off the diving board, you're very aware of, oh, I'm doing this trick. Most of us jump off, and then we aren't really aware of what our body's doing. We're still doing things. We're still holding tension. We're still acting in a certain way, but we aren't actively thinking of it. So that's kind of how intuition is. There's all these steps that we skip in our head, but that did happen unconsciously. Whereas with sensing, you're aware of all the different steps. So then, sensors are most interested in the actuality around them, so they have little attention to spare for ideas coming out of nowhere. Also, now is probably a good time to point out I have these little numbers in the parentheses there. Those are the page numbers. You'll find this in Gifts Differing, which is the book by Briggs about this. So I'll have a link to the book, maybe on like Goodreads or something that you can jump over to, because it's a great resource, and that's where I'm getting all my quotes from here. So back to the quote though. So being more interested in the actuality around them and having little attention to spare for ideas coming out of nowhere, right? So since I have more intuition than I do sensing, honestly, sensing is almost hard for me to describe in a way. I mean, they both are, but sensing is because I don't take in the world that way usually. I'm less interested in the tangible nature of the things I'm around. I'm less interested in, the chair I'm in is black, the shirt I'm wearing is pink. Those are things, this has kind of a rough texture to it, right? That's something I'm not ever actively aware of those things. If someone asks me to describe someone to them, I usually have trouble, whereas a sensor wouldn't have much trouble because they would have been thinking about that. They would have noticed how a person looks more than I did. And then intuitive people are so engrossed in pursuing the possibilities it presents that they seldom look intently at the actualities. So sensing is all about what is actually there. Intuition is about what is behind that thing that's there. What is different, right? So I might pay more attention to people's speech patterns because that's something behind there. And then, of course, the more you develop either type of perception, the more it develops, which sounds obvious because if you use something, you get better at it. And if you use something less, you don't get better at it, which is why we all have both types of perception. We just have one that we'll choose over the other. And that one gets better from when we're a younger kid. And we just use it and use it and use it and use it. So then there are the two methods of judging. So thinking, to come to conclusions by a logical process aimed at impersonal findings, and feeling, to come to conclusions by appreciation, where we bestow on things a personal, subjective value. So I think the best way there really to sum it up is thinking is far more objective. Feeling is far more subjective. It's about, I can appreciate this thing. This thing has a value to me. So maybe when I'm watching a movie, it's like, how does it make me feel? That's a feeler's way of going into it, because it's how does it make me feel? What do I appreciate about the characters and the plot and the construction of the film? Whereas a thinking way of looking at it is, how did they get that shot? Right? How did they do this shot composition, right? How did they get this shot that I'm looking at right now? How did they do that thing, right? These objective things where somehow they did this, and the thinker's going, how did they do that? And of course, a lot of us when we're watching movies have both things going on at the same time, where we're thinking about these things, but frequently we'll think about one more than the other. Next slide. So the two methods of judging. A thinker may ask themselves if they are consistent and logical. A feeler may ask themselves if certain ideas are pleasing or displeasing. So that basically sums up that part of the idea. Because, how often do you think about how consistent you are? Is it more about oh, I need to have these ideas lined up in my head. I need to be a consistent individual. My ideas need to all match and be able to fit together like this big puzzle. Everything needs to go together. Or is it more about the individual ideas and, oh, does this please me? Right? Because being pleased by something is very different from going, oh, objectively, this is what's happening here. This is what's happening here. I can be pleased by the way someone's voice sounds. Or I can be objectively going, oh, well, they have this certain type of voice, which means their vocal cords are shaped in this way and they act in this way. Those are two very different ways of looking at things. And we're consistently using both. So then, the child who prefers feeling becomes more adult in the handling of human relationships, while the child who prefers thinking grows more adept in the organization of facts and ideas. Like perception, the more you use a certain kind of judgment, the more it develops. So this is important just to highlight that both of them are super useful for different things, and that we do need both. And lots of the times, kids struggle in one of these two areas. Generally, at least one. I mean, not all kids struggle in one of them. Not all kids are good at either of them either, right? Every kid's different, but still, there's certain children who, oh, you go socially, they're doing pretty well. But maybe as far as organizing their facts and ideas, maybe in school, they aren't doing as well because they just don't have this organizational system in place yet, right? So now we're going to look at the perception and judgment combos. So there's ST, sensing thinking, SF, sensing feeling, NF, intuition feeling, and T, intuition thinking. Of course, we use the N for intuition because later on, I is going to be for introverted. And each one of these different combos produces, wow, I can't speak today. Each one produces a different kind of personality characterized by the interests, values, needs, habits of mind, and surface traits that naturally result from that combination. So basically, this is deciding for so much of the personality. All right, so for sensing plus thinking. In this case, sensing is being used for perception, thinking is being used for judgment. This individual is likely to focus on facts because facts can be collected and verified directly by the senses. There's the impersonal analysis of these facts. There's step-by-step reasoning, moving from cause to effect. There's this practical, matter-of-fact aura and way of acting. And the areas of interest and adeptness these people might have are economics, law, surgery, business, accounting, production, and the handling of machine and materials. So this makes sense that there's this organization of facts. Sensing is very detail-oriented because there's an awareness of all the steps from getting from one thing to the next. And naturally, since it's ST, they're going to be interested in these objective facts, these things that aren't up for dispute. It's not about appreciation, right? Like science, there can be an appreciation for it. Someone can love doing science, but there's always that objective part. There's the, with math, for example, there's the objectiveness of 2 + 2 = 4. Of course, that's a human-made way of thinking of numbers, but it's indisputable that in our way of doing math, 2 + 2 does equal 4. And then the impersonal analysis of these facts, again, that comes from very particular analysis because you're breaking down something. You're breaking it down into its pieces and looking at each of the pieces and lining them up because there's the step-by-step reasoning. And there's a movement from cause to effect. You're moving around and collecting all these ideas and, like I said, lining them up and taking them and going, what can I do with these? How do I organize them? How do they work? And it's incredibly useful for any sort of project. These people are great. They might not see the big picture. There's that saying of seeing the forest, or do you see the trees. Sensors see the trees, and they see them vividly. And in this case, the thinker sees the objective things about the trees. They see the color of the bark. They feel the bark. How does the bark feel? They can tell how healthy the leaves look, right? These objective things about the tree, to go really deep into the tree metaphor. So yeah, then there's all these, like I had listed before, there's the areas of interest or adeptness, so things that you might be good at. It's important, though, to remember, like, even if you're an ST, sensing and a thinker, I mean, these are just ideas of things you might enjoy, right? Even, you might not even know which one of these you are, but if you do, don't read any of what I'm saying as, like, rules, and don't put yourself into a box and go, this is how I have to act. All these things are meant to be tools that will help you, not box you in. So now we have sensing plus feeling. So these people approach decisions with personal warmth. They consider how much things matter both to themselves and to others, and they want to learn about people and to remember facts about them. So they tend to be more sociable and friendly. They apply personal warmth to immediate situations, and their areas of interest or adeptness are pediatrics, nursing, teaching, especially elementary, social work, selling of tangibles, and service with a smile, jobs. Now again, this makes sense with the sensing, right? Sensing for perception, feeling for judgment. There's that appreciation for things. And I mean, that's an element of feeling that's always there, is the warmth, the personal nature, because everything is this so subjective, right? So such a subjectivity attached to ideas and concepts and enjoyment. So then naturally they consider how much things matter both to themselves and to others. And part of that idea of thinking about the other person comes from an SF's want to collect facts about the person, because they aren't interested in the objective truths of things. They want to know the subjective, both for themselves and for other people. So they want to know, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite food? What do you do in your free time? They want to know these facts, and they want to memorize them, and they want to know these things. So maybe these are the guys, they're stalking your Facebook because they want to know things. So then again, there's the list of areas of interest and adeptness if you want to check that out, because that might give you a good idea for things. Or maybe you'll look at those and go like, oh, I really like the idea of a lot of these things. Maybe I'm in SF. Then there's intuition plus feeling, so NF. So personal warmth, like SF. They don't focus their attention upon the concrete situation. Instead, they focus on possibilities. They're enthusiastic and insightful. They're gifted communicators and users of language. They are able to communicate the possibility they can see and the value they attach to it. They use creativity to meet a human need. And their areas of interest and adeptness are teaching, particularly college and high school, preaching, advertising, selling of intangibles, counseling, clinical psychology, psychiatry, writing, and most fields of research. So if we go through these, now we have intuition for perception and feeling for judgment. And that idea of not focusing on the concrete situation is huge for all the intuitives. Whereas with sensing, as we've seen both with the SF and the ST, there's this focus on what's in front of you on the present moment, right? They're living in the present of the conversations they're having, of the place they're in. They're focusing on the tangible idea, on the present, whereas intuition is always this focus on what's possible. What could this place be, right? There's this drive towards a different future, towards what could be, not what is. So with NF, there's of course that focus on possibilities. And then they're enthusiastic and insightful. So the enthusiasm probably comes from seeing that possibility and being excited and appreciating what this possibility could mean. Because with the feeling, there's appreciation. And then the insightfulness would come from like the intuition, So this idea that they can figure out how to get certain things done, even if they don't know all the steps to them, they'll be able to figure it out, and they can be insightful because maybe, to use a very human example, maybe they can look at how people are feeling, and they can figure out with very little info, relatively little info, why the person feels that way. Which is why a lot of the times, as we saw with like the interests, the areas of interest, they're super good with counseling and with teaching because of that insightfulness. And then there's the creativity, which is a huge part, I think, of all the intuitive groups. Not to say that sensors can't be creative, but intuition is just this creative process because of the aha moments, right? That aha moment is so important to creativity because you'll be trying to get something done. Let's say you're drawing and you want to get a certain thing done, and then you get it, and it's like you figure out how to make something look a certain way on the page, and you're just excited. And that's a very intuitive aha woo moment, right? Then of course they're using creativity to meet human need. That's because of the feeling, and feeling's very attached to other people all the time, whereas thinking isn't quite as attached to other people. So now we're at intuition plus thinking. So they focus on possibility, but they approach it with impersonal analysis. They ignore or toss aside the human element. They're logical and ingenious, and their areas of interest or adeptness are scientific research, electronic computing, mathematics, the more complex aspects of finance, or any sort of development or pioneering in technical areas. So now in this case, it's intuition for perception and thinking for judgment. That focus on possibilities is there again because of the intuition, but now instead of it being this creativity to meet a human need, it's focused on possibility through just looking at facts, looking at ideas that are already there and that are already concrete in the sense that they're relatively written in stone. They're things that we know, and we can build on those. So, like the NF, that's personal because it's subjective. The NT is objective. So they're seeing where they think objectively, a place or an idea or a thing could go, and they want to get there, but in a very impersonal way. They'll look at it and go, okay, well, what are the steps? And they might not get as muddled up emotionally in the creative process. They might be more detached. I know you might be thinking, where's all the info on the NTs? Because there's not that much here. Well, for whatever reason, in this chapter of Briggs' book, they don't talk as much about the NTs. I don't know why that is. Because you guys are great. So, next time, we're going to look at the difference between introversion, extroversion, judging, and perceiving. And I'm a little penguin mascot guy saying, remember to like and subscribe, and there's some other videos for you guys to watch. So, I should have another video on Friday. I believe that's the schedule I'm going to do is Monday, Friday releases. So yeah. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time, and hopefully talk to you down in the comments below. Bye-bye.